The dry erase marker had gone soft at the tip. I kept writing anyway, letting the black smudge trail under the diagram on the whiteboard, while no one in the room looked up. It wasn't heavy, that marker, just honest. I'd drawn that warning line 3 times now. You ever feel like you're speaking underwater? Not just in a meeting or two. Not just when the higher-ups are in a rush and don't want friction. I mean every day, for months. Like your voice enters the room, and somehow, just at the edge of everyone's attention, it dissolves. That's what it was like with the integration team. Smart people, talented developers, good engineers, a couple of MBA types sprinkled in for delivery structure, or whatever they were calling it now. But none of them, none, wanted to hear what I had to say once the rollout roadmap got stamped. My name's Ben Cormack, Senior Systems Analyst at a mid-sized software firm outside Pittsburgh. I'd been with the company 8 years. Quiet guy, not flashy, not political. But I knew our system backbone like I knew the grooves in my truck's steering wheel, and I knew we weren't ready for what they were pushing out in Q4. But no one wanted to stop the train. It started back in May. They announced this shiny new product suite, cloud-based compliance tools for mid-market banks. We'd been in financial tech for years, but mostly legacy platforms. This was our leap forward, as the CEO put it. Modern UI, modular deployment, real-time data sync across distributed branches. On paper, it looked sleek. Too sleek. The problem wasn't the features. It was the core system they wanted to plug it into. I pulled the first red flag in June. We were in the big glass conference room on 9, the one with the giant whiteboard wall. I was walking them through the dependencies chart, showing how Module D's event queue was already overloaded by internal job sweeps. If we introduced real-time triggers from customer-side compliance checks, we'd hit latency thresholds fast. It's manageable, my tech lead Marcus said, barely glancing up from his Surface. It's not, I replied. We're running at 83% load on the queue during month end. Any spike over 15% pushes us into rollback territory. No one wrote it down. Instead, Danielle, our PM, tapped her pen against her notebook. Can we just scale that queue horizontally? Not without rewriting the job scheduler, I said. And the scheduler touches 6 subsystems. It's not modular. She gave me that smile. The one where you're not actually smiling with your eyes. Let's log it as a risk and keep moving. That was the first warning. It wouldn't be the last. I tried being louder, not obnoxious, just firm. In weekly status calls, I'd reflag the queue risk, the sync timeout potential, the partial write race conditions on shared DB locks. Each time, someone would nod, then redirect. One week it was a budgeting distraction. The next, a client demo. Then Marcus started parking my comments for asynchronous review. I even wrote a full technical memo, 11 pages, with architecture diagrams, on what I called the cascade window. That's the narrow slice of system time where a fail state in one module could trigger retries in another, causing a backlog loop that would eat itself. I sent it to the full team. I attached it to our Jira board. I brought printed copies to sprint planning. No one read it. Well, Jared did. He was our most junior dev, fresh out of CMU, sharp kid, always polite. A few days after I sent the memo, he stopped by my cubicle. I read your document, he said, almost in a whisper. It made sense. Scary sense. I gave him a half smile. Thanks for reading it. Why isn't anyone... I shook my head. Because it's not their problem yet. By August, I was exhausted. We were deep into UAT with the first client, Wilkinson Community Bank. Small, regional, but with multiple branches and some legacy quirks. They had strict SLAs, and our compliance suite had to hit sub-second response times for flagged transactions. I started running shadow tests, quiet ones. I forked the event simulator and ran midnight load projections based on real Wilkinson data. What I saw made me physically ill. Under high concurrency, say 5 active branch locations running back-to-back compliance checks, the system began to fail silently. No alerts, just failed writes, skipped flags, and data gaps. And because the retry logic was passive, the gaps looked like clean transactions. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I asked Marcus if I could walk through the test results in the team sync. He glanced at the deck I was holding and said, "We don't have time for side threads today. Just email it." I did. No replies. 3 days later, the CEO posted a LinkedIn announcement, excited to see our compliance platform enter Phase 2 rollout, game changer for regional banking. I stared at it for a long time. The product name, Comply Right, sitting there next to my department's logo. Pride wasn't what I felt. It was dread. Then came the meeting. Not scheduled. Just one of those impromptu drop-bys that feel like ambushes. Marcus popped his head over my cube wall. "Hey, Ben, can you join us in room 302? Us. When I walked in, Danielle was already sitting there, along with a guy from product strategy I barely knew. Lance, I think. There was a chair pulled out for me. Marcus cleared his throat. "We're pivoting the narrative a bit," Danielle chimed in. "The client is loving the interface, but they're less clear on the data retention model. They found some discrepancies." My stomach sank. "What kind of discrepancies?" I asked, though I already knew. "Time gaps," Lance said. "Minor, but noticeable." "They flagged 6 missing compliance pings," Danielle added, "which were in the simulator logs, but not the output trace." They looked at me. "It's the cascade window," I said quietly. Marcus frowned. "We're not sure it's that." "Did you read my memo?" He looked at Danielle. She looked at Lance. No one answered. The next week was a blur. They assigned me to triage the issue, but with a new client onboarding in 2 weeks, they pushed back against any rollback. "We need to find a patch, not a panic," Marcus said. So I dug. I traced every dropped event, every race condition. I confirmed the scheduler conflict. I built a test suite. I stayed late. I missed dinner with my wife. I missed my son's soccer game. But what finally broke me wasn't the workload. It was the bug tracker. I logged my findings, clearly, precisely, with steps to reproduce. The next day, I saw Marcus had marked the ticket, low priority, to verify later. Later. Then came the crash. Wilkinson ran their quarterly batch across all branches, simultaneously, against our guidance. The system held for about 7 seconds. Then came the spike. The queues filled. The scheduler locked. The retry loop kicked in, twice, and the cleanup job misfired. 8 minutes later, the system crashed. Dead. And the last successful log entry before the fail? It was my test event, my signature, my name, time-stamped in the crash trace. It wasn't my code, but it was my proof of concept run, the one I'd used to warn them. Suddenly, it looked like I'd crashed the system. I got a calendar invite within the hour. Subject: urgent. Review meeting. Attendees: Marcus, Danielle, HR, no agenda, just my name. "You're not in trouble, Ben. This is just procedural." Danielle said it with the same tone someone might use to tell you your dog ran away, but it's probably fine. Beat. I didn't believe her then. I still don't. The elevator ride to HR felt longer than it should have. I'd taken it hundreds of times, but this one dragged. Every floor ding echoed in my chest. My badge felt like lead on its lanyard. When I got to the 3rd floor, Marcus was already outside the room, arms folded, staring at a motivational poster on the wall, some foggy mountain peak with the words, "Excellence is a habit," in big, bold italics. He didn't greet me, just nodded once and walked in. Danielle was inside, legs crossed tightly, iPad in her lap. A second later, Jeff from HR entered, middle-aged, tired eyes, always smells faintly like hand sanitizer and cinnamon gum. They didn't offer me water. Jeff opened with the usual script. This meeting is to discuss the recent incident involving the Wilkinson deployment and the compliance platform's unexpected downtime. It is not a disciplinary hearing. It is, however, a formal review. He looked at me like a man reading from a page he didn't write. Danielle jumped in. There are logs showing a test event originated from your sandbox environment. That event was the last successful system action prior to failure. Can you walk us through why it was active during the client's production run? I kept my voice steady. It wasn't a live test. It was a diagnostic ping. The same diagnostic I've run a dozen times to map the cascade window. You all know this. I shared the procedure. Marcus tapped his pen. Did you inform anyone you were running it that night? I flagged the risk, logged it in Jira, attached the memo, mentioned it in 3 separate stand-ups. Danielle clicked her tongue. But no specific alert that it would run at the exact moment Wilkinson processed their batch. I narrowed my eyes. Because you told me to run continuous diagnostics. Because Marcus deprioritized my bug report. Because this whole room ignored every single flag I raised for 3 months straight. Jeff scribbled something. Let me be absolutely clear, I said, leaning forward. This crash didn't happen because of my test. It happened because we deployed a faulty scheduling system without rewrite. I predicted this. You ignored me. Silence. Jeff cleared his throat. Okay, we appreciate your candor. We'll document that and circle back once engineering finishes their impact report. Am I being suspended? No, he said quickly. You're just temporarily removed from the client-facing task list. Focus on internal audits. I knew what that meant. I was being sidelined. The next few days were bitter. I wasn't allowed on the Wilkinson recovery calls. Danielle said it was to prevent confusion. My Jira access was downgraded. My direct Slack channel with Marcus, quietly removed. Jared, the junior dev, came by my desk once. They're blaming you, he whispered. I know, but it wasn't your code. I know that too. I read the new patch notes. They're rebuilding the Q job, just like you said. That hit harder than I expected. They know you were right, he added. I smiled. Thin, sharp. Knowing and admitting aren't the same thing. At home, my wife noticed the change before I said a word. You're not talking at dinner, she said one night, and you've stopped checking emails like they matter. I told her everything. Not in a venting way, just facts. The warnings, the ignored memos, the crash, the scapegoating. She didn't interrupt, just listened, holding her wine glass by the stem. When I finished, she set it down. Are you going to fight it? I don't know. You should, she said. This isn't one of those let it go moments. This is your name. I spent the next week in digital purgatory, auditing old test cases, running log comparisons, stuff no one else wanted to touch. My screen became a blur of timestamps and line breaks, until one log entry stood out. It was a system handshake from the Wilkinson environment, timestamped 2 minutes before, my diagnostic ping. But it wasn't normal. The session ID had a malformed payload, too large, wrong hash. At first, I thought it was a corruption, but then I saw it. A failed third-party integration call, triggered by a feature toggle that was supposed to be disabled. I cross-referenced it against the release notes. That feature, it wasn't even in production yet. Someone had manually activated it. I dove in deeper, reconstructed the call stack, parsed the headers, pulled old Jenkins build logs from our CI pipeline. There it was. Build tag pre-prod toggle 7 pushed live without approval signature. Only a handful of people had permissions for that. Marcus was one of them. That night, I sat at my desk long after everyone left. I printed the logs, all of them. I highlighted the toggle push, the malformed payload, the timestamp conflict, and the test event overlap. I laid them out like crime scene photos across my cubicle. This wasn't just negligence anymore. This was cover-up territory. The next morning, I walked into Marcus's office before he had his second coffee. "Got a minute?" He nodded, distracted. I laid the folder on his desk. He frowned. "What's this?" Proof that the crash wasn't my fault, and that the feature toggle was pushed live manually without change control. He didn't open it, just stared at me. "Your signature's on the pipeline log," I added. Silence. I waited. Finally, he said, "You really want to go to war over this?" I stared back. "It's not war. It's my name." He sighed. "I'll talk to Danielle." Later that day, I got an email from HR. Subject: meeting follow-up, next steps. Time: Friday, 10 a.m. Attendees: Jeff, Danielle, Marcus, legal. The seat in the HR conference room was still warm when I sat down. Someone had just left it, probably legal. I pressed my palms against the fake wood table and waited for them to start pretending I didn't already know the script. The Friday morning meeting was different. Not in the setting, same beige room, same dead fern in the corner, but in the vibe. People avoided eye contact. The room smelled faintly of lemon wipes and stress. Danielle didn't smile this time. Marcus had a legal pad in front of him, but he wasn't taking notes. And Jeff from HR? He brought someone new. "Ben, this is Rachel Stern. She's here from legal just as an observer." Observer? Right. Rachel nodded but didn't speak. She had a quiet presence. Glasses, dark blazer, phone face down beside a thick folder. I knew she'd already read everything. Jeff opened the meeting. "Thanks for coming in. We'd like to review the updated findings around the Wilkinson system outage and address the discovery of the unauthorized feature deployment." I stayed silent. Danielle spoke next. "We've confirmed that a toggle was manually activated in the production environment, which allowed access to a module still under internal development. That appears to have contributed significantly to the cascade failure. No apology, no acknowledgement, just sterile language." Marcus added, "We've also reviewed the CI pipeline logs. The deployment originated from a service account with elevated permissions." I leaned forward. "That service account routes to your credentials, Marcus." Rachel finally spoke. "Ben, do you believe this deployment was made intentionally?" I looked at her. Steady. "I believe it was made without informing the team. I believe warnings were ignored, and I believe I was positioned as the fall guy." No one argued. After a long silence, Jeff cleared his throat. "The company is treating this as a misalignment in deployment governance. We're implementing new access protocols immediately." "That's it?" I asked. "No accountability?" Danielle shifted in her chair. "This wasn't about blame, Ben. We're trying to focus on solutions. You sidelined me. You erased my access. You put me in front of HR like I broke something you deployed." Rachel nodded once, then flipped a page in her folder. "Ben, as a matter of procedural fairness, would you be willing to submit a written statement detailing your warnings, communications, and attempts to intervene prior to the crash?" "Yes." "Would you be willing to provide timestamps, email logs, and attachments to support your timeline?" "I already have them." The meeting ended quietly. Rachel thanked me. Jeff didn't meet my eyes. Danielle packed her iPad and walked out without a word. Marcus lingered, just me and him, awkward in the fluorescent silence. "You think this fixes anything?" he said softly. "I think it uncovers something." "Be careful, Ben." I was. That's why it's you in the logs. That weekend, I didn't touch a screen. No email, no Slack, no code. I grilled outside, watched my son paint his toy dinosaurs, helped my wife trim the rose bush that had gone wild near the back fence. It was the first time in weeks I felt real. But late Sunday night, an email came through from Rachel Stern. Subject: documentation received. Body: thanks, Ben. I've reviewed the files. Let's talk this week. There's a pattern emerging. A pattern. Monday morning, I came into a hallway buzz. Marcus wasn't in. No one knew where he was. By noon, whispers had made their way across every floor. Did you hear? He's on administrative leave. They say it's tied to the crash. Legal's involved. Something about deployment fraud? Jared swung by my desk, eyes wide. Dude, you actually brought him down? I didn't bring anyone down, Baz said. I just turned on the lights. Rachel scheduled a private follow-up with me that afternoon. We met in the smaller legal office down the hall. No windows, just a single table and 2 chairs. She had a new file, this time. This is bigger than we thought, she said, flipping it open. What do you mean? There are logs from 3 prior releases, similar deployment anomalies, same override tags, same service account. I sat back. So the crash wasn't a one-off. No, it was the 4th close call. This time it broke. She slid a printed sheet across the table. Audit trail, 3 names. Mine wasn't on it. Was Marcus acting alone? She looked at me carefully. We don't know yet, but Danielle's name came up in a security log. Backdated toggle approval, possibly forged. I let out a slow breath. This was never just about ignoring warnings, was it? No, she said. It was about hiding decisions until someone got burned. 2 days later, I was called into the CTO's office. That had never happened before. His name was George Lynn. Quiet, sharp, always 2 steps ahead of the board. He gestured for me to sit. No assistant, no notes. I've read your documentation, Ben. Okay. I owe you an apology, and probably a raise. I didn't answer. He folded his hands. What happened to you? Being sidelined, blamed, erased, that ends now. Marcus is on unpaid leave pending internal investigation. Danielle has been reassigned indefinitely. Legal is pursuing data tampering charges. I blinked. And you, he continued, are going to head up our new systems integrity division. I froze. Me? You saw the cracks before anyone else. That's what we need. Eyes that don't flinch. You'll have autonomy and access. I exhaled. And my name? Already cleared. We've issued a public correction to Wilkinson. They know the fault wasn't yours. They've asked you to be on their next oversight call. It took me a moment to absorb it. This was real. Later that day, I walked back to my desk. The air felt lighter. Colleagues glanced at me with something new in their eyes. Not pity, not suspicion, respect. Jared gave me a nod and a silent thumbs up. My screen flickered to life. New login credentials, a new title, systems integrity lead. It wasn't just a win, it was redemption. But that's not where this story ends. Because the truth is, the system didn't crash just from code, it crashed from silence. And that's the one thing I'll never let happen again. It was 6:17 a.m. on a Thursday, my first day as systems integrity lead. I was in early, too early probably. The coffee machine hadn't finished its startup hum. But I wasn't there for coffee. I was there for names. That first week in the new role wasn't about celebration. It was about reconstruction. Not of code or features, but trust. The company was shaken. Quietly, yes, nothing hit the news. But inside our walls, people talked. In elevators, in restrooms, on Slack threads that vanished after 10 minutes. There was a sense of adjustment, like everyone suddenly remembered that systems don't fail on their own, that someone is always watching, and someone else always should have. I wasn't interested in vengeance. I didn't want a trophy or a framed letter from legal. I wanted to ensure this didn't happen again. not under my watch, and not under someone else's silence. George, the CTO, had made good on his word. He gave me full access. Server logs, branch histories, QA bypass reports, everything that had been firewalled from my team before. The first thing I did, I pulled 6 months' worth of deployment logs and ran a differential scan for unapproved build pushes and toggle changes. It took 10 hours. I found 12 anomalies. Most of them were minor. Expedited pushes, fast-tracked hotfixes, feature toggles activated for A/B testing without full documentation. But 3 of them had Marcus's fingerprints. 1 had Danielle's, and two were routed through what looked like a ghost service account, SVC Promo Staging Legacy, unlisted in current directories, no password reset in over 200 days, no ownership in Active Directory, a ghost user. Someone had been using an old deployment channel to route bypasses. I brought it to Rachel in legal. She squinted at the audit trail. This account was supposed to be deactivated when the staging environment changed quarters ago. It wasn't. Why wasn't it caught? I shrugged, because no one was looking. That line would become my department's slogan. No one was looking. It wasn't flashy, but it was true. My job wasn't to invent new security, just to see the old cracks no one else bothered with. Rachel and I built a plan. She pushed from the legal side. I pushed from the technical. We drafted a full rollback of ghost accounts, implemented mandatory dual approvals for all toggle changes, and flagged any service account with legacy credentials for review. We were finally putting locks on the doors that had been swinging open for years. Marcus didn't come back. No one said it out loud, but people knew. I overheard it once, 2 senior devs by the water cooler. Yeah, he's not coming back. Stern found too much. He was good, though. Good at shipping, not at owning failure. That stuck with me. Danielle was quietly transferred to a different department. Something client adjacent, but nowhere near deployment controls. They never called it a demotion. But it was. I expected some backlash in my new role. What I didn't expect was how many people started showing up at my door. Engineers, analysts, even designers, all with the same kind of quiet confession. Hey, I've seen something like this before, but I didn't know who to tell. I flagged an issue last quarter. Got told it was noise. If I bring this up, am I safe? That last one gutted me. I leaned into it. I started a weekly session called Signal Hour. Not mandatory, no agenda, no minutes. Just a Zoom link and an open door in Conf Room 5C. Every Friday morning at 9:30, anyone could come in and drop a concern. Not a complaint. Those had channels. Not an idea. Those had town halls. This was for signals, warnings, quiet flags, things that might otherwise get lost between sprints or under sticky notes or buried in polite Slack messages. The first week, 2 people showed up. Second week, 5. By the 6th week, I had to move to the larger conference room. One case stood out. A junior QA dev, Allie, brought a report that showed a spike in non-reproducible test failures. It looked random at first, but when we pulled logs, it matched against time zones, specifically Eastern Europe. One of our contracted developers overseas had been injecting manual test skips at runtime, then clearing them before commit. No one had caught it. The failures only showed if you ran the tests on a particular time offset. Without Allie's flag, it would have gone live. I promoted her. The company didn't blink. That was the difference now. Jared, the junior dev who read my memo months ago, became my unofficial second pair of eyes. He asked if he could move under systems integrity full-time. Don't you want to keep building stuff? I asked. I want to build things that don't fall apart. Fair enough. He was sharp, cautious, methodical. I trusted him more than I trusted most. Things were improving, slowly. Not everyone liked the changes. Some project leads complained about the new guardrails. Slows us down, they said. Feels like micromanagement. But for every complaint, there were 3 quiet thank yous. And for the first time in a long time, the error logs started shrinking. Then came the letter. It was on my desk one morning. Unmarked envelope. Inside, a single sheet of printer paper. Typed anonymous. You were right, but there are more. Look at the beta branch from November. Look for the initials CJ. No signature, no return address, nothing else. I sat there, staring at it. Heart pounding, I pulled the repo immediately. Beta branch. November builds. Nothing suspicious at first. Then I looked at commit history. 3 entries labeled optimized checks, all from the same user alias. CJDevXT, no full name. External credential. Same ghost staging route, no documentation, no peer review, just code inserted between 2 legit commits. And guess what? The diff showed a line that bypassed audit logs for compliance pings under certain client IDs. Silently skipped. No alerts. It was Wilkinson all over again, just better hidden. Who the hell was CJ, and how far did this thing go? I wasn't looking at old ghosts anymore. I was looking at an active breach. Halfway through highlighting the 3rd suspicious commit, I felt it, an alert ping from the security console. I didn't even flinch, just kept dragging my cursor. The trap was already closing. The anonymous letter wasn't a bluff. The more I dug, the deeper the pit got. 3 commits from CJDevXT across multiple repositories, each designed to inject a quiet bypass, each without the required peer review. And everyone routed through that same ghost service account, SVC promo staging legacy. Worse, this wasn't just technical sabotage. These changes had client-facing implications. Quietly skipping regulatory flags, failing to audit sensitive transactions, rerouting compliance logic. If they had gone live, our clients would have faced real-world legal liability, which meant we would have too. I brought it to Rachel immediately. She read silently for 5 full minutes. This wasn't negligence, I said. This was deliberate obfuscation. These lines were disguised like performance optimizations, but they're logic bombs. She tapped the file once. How long would it take you to trace the true identity of the developer? Depends if they spoofed credentials. But if they didn't? I exhaled. Give me 3 hours. I called in Jared. He'd proven himself more than capable over the last few months, and this wasn't the time to hold back. We rerouted the trace logs and linked into access control for archived Jenkins builds. One pattern emerged fast. The commits came from a VPN linked to Romania. That was odd. We hadn't had any active contractors from Romania in over a year. And yet, this user pushed commits for 3 weeks straight during November. Their SSH key, it matched one formerly assigned to a contract QA engineer from an outsourcing firm we offboarded last summer. Name: Christian Jovan. CJ, Rachel, and I met with George, the CTO, late that afternoon. The meeting was quiet, focused. George reviewed the logs, then leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temple. How the hell did this slip through? Because Christian reused old credentials that were never deactivated, I said, and he used our staging pipeline as a backdoor. Rachel added, he had just enough access to push commits without triggering alerts, because the Ghost Service account was still active. George looked sick. Do we know if anything made it to production? Not yet, I said. But if we don't lock it down now, we'll lose the ability to find out. He nodded. Fix it, quietly. And if there's fallout, prepare a public-facing statement. The next 48 hours were a sprint. We conducted a full internal audit of every deployment over the last year. Every service account was scrubbed. Every access token invalidated. New credentials issued, 2-factor enforced. Jared built a tool that ran recursive checks on all Git branches for anomalies. Signature mismatches, orphaned commits, weird author timestamps. By the end of the second day, we'd found 2 more logic bombs, both in beta branches, neither live. We caught them in time. Barely. Christian, meanwhile, was harder to trace. His contracting firm had dissolved. His LinkedIn was inactive. Emails bounced. He'd vanished. But his signature remained in the code. Rachel compiled everything and escalated it to the board. Legal began preparing documentation to cooperate with external cybercrime units. We weren't calling it a breach yet, but the signs were all there. And I knew one thing for certain. The system didn't crash because of just my team's ignorance. It was engineered to. I'd been shouting into a storm, unaware someone else was quietly building the flood. On Friday, Rachel called me into her office again. Not the usual legal room, her actual office. Desk, framed photo of a Labrador in a bow tie. First time I'd seen her relax. We traced a pattern, she said. Christian didn't work alone. I sat up. There's a former employee, high-level architecture guy from 5 years ago, helped build the first staging pipeline, left under strange circumstances, but his name is in some of the SSH key logs. Internal help? I asked. Looks that way. Possibly revenge. Possibly just money. George walked in right then. His face said everything. This may hit the press, he said. We're preparing. I stared at them both. And what do you want from me? Rachel gave a faint smile. We want you to speak at the all hands. Why me? Because it started with your name in the logs, George said, and because it ends with you clearing it. The all hands was the following Monday. I didn't write a speech. I didn't need to. I stood on that stage, behind the plexiglass podium, and looked out at the 300-something employees in that room, and the other few hundred joining via live stream. I told them everything. Not the classified parts, but the truth. About systems failing quietly, about ignored warnings, about the danger of silence, about how what we build matters, but how we guard it matters more. And I told them the phrase that had become our North Star, no one was looking. That stops now. Afterwards, I got a standing ovation. It felt surreal. People shook my hand, sent emails, dropped messages in chat. Even folks who had once ignored me now thanked me, and a few of them said something I didn't expect. I've been there too. The last thing I did before leaving the office that day, I walked back into Conf Room 5C, signal hour. It was empty now, but the whiteboard still had a single message someone had written in dry erase. They listened, finally. I stood there for a moment, then erased it, not because it wasn't true, but because I wanted to leave the board clean, ready for the next voice. I got home before sunset. My son was in the yard, covered in grass, and grinning. My wife was reading on the porch. She looked up as I parked. You look lighter, she said. I am. What changed? I thought about it for a second. Then I smiled. I was finally heard. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.